Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. We mark the passing of Yegor Gaidar, the Prime Minister of Russia in the 1990s under Yeltsin, under the IMF puppet regime of Yeltsin. And Yegor Gaidar, this Prime Minister, a monetarist, a follower of the Austrian school, an agent of the IMF himself, and of London and the city and Wall Street. He is the author of Shock Therapy, taking the Soviet command economy with the problems that it had and essentially destroying about 60% of its production, inflicting untold misery on the masses of Russia, wiping out the existing middle class, and then leading up to the bankruptcy of all this when the bubble burst in 1998. Shock therapy. And I point out this shock therapy because this is what the libertarians want. If you listen to various libertarian Republicans, they demand what? Privatization, deregulation, no government interference, laissez-faire, price reform, no price controls, no limitations, expose the flesh of the population to the full fury and rapacity of Wall Street in the middle of a depression. Well, this is what Yegor Gaidar did, and the result was absolutely catastrophic. You want to go back to it. A lot of people in Russia had savings. Their savings were wiped out mercilessly. The state property that was the fruit of the labor of the Soviet people was privatized into the hands of rapacious oligarchs. Some of them are in jail now, like Khodorkovsky. Some of them, like Berezovsky, are in London working for British intelligence. The Russian middle class, my own experience, Moscow, November 1993, you'd go to a subway entrance in Moscow, this wonderful metro system that the Soviet capital, the Russian capital, had, and you'd see middle-class people, teachers, doctors, lawyers, standing there in middle-class clothing, suits, fur coats even, with fur collars at least for the women, trying to sell some miserable possession, one bottle of milk, a calendar, some object of art that they'd had in their family for years to try to survive. In other words, it was the destruction of the middle class, the absolute immiseration and impoverishment of the Soviet and Russian middle class by this Yegor Gaidar, this agent of the IMF. And I urge our libertarian friends, think about what you propose, because when this was done, the kind of stuff that you people are talking about, deregulation, privatization, laissez-faire, no limitations, look what that did to Russia. The loss of about two-thirds of their production, the immiseration and destruction of the middle class. Now, in conclusion, though, let's say a couple of words about this Christmastide and what this means. Also, let's think about what does Christmas mean for economic development, because it does. I urge you, first of all, go to Tarpley.net. The new Tarpley.net, which should be up by the time this goes on, has that economic program, 30 million jobs for the United States and the U.S. as a world leader in a world recovery. What is the significance of Christmas in this regard? Well, it's simply this. Is God willing to come into the world? A very interesting point, because that is what Christmas asserts. God is willing to come into the world for the sake of humanity. What are the philosophical implications of this? Well, it means, first of all, that the material world can't be that bad. The world we live in is at least potentially good. It can be improved to a significant degree, potentially good. And remember, Christ is human in every way that anybody is, to include everything, and it means everything. But he's also totus homo and totus deus at the same time, all God, all man at the same time. So these are not incompatible. There is no gulf. It's not that God is all the way up there and you're all the way down here like a little worm. So therefore, the human condition, the human body and the material universe cannot be radically evil, because otherwise how could God ever have anything to do with this? Now this reflects on a long debate. The dualistic religions, the Manichaeans, the Zoroastrians, religions of the East, and the Nirvana religions, Buddhism and Hinduism in a different way, reflect on this problem there's the general undertone here, especially in the dualists, that the material world is bad and the world of the spirit is good. Now, this is a very dangerous idea. This idea is strongly present in Luther, and it has found its way into Protestantism to a significant degree. It's better, though, to see the material universe as not radically evil. It's not the property of the devil, but it's something that can be improved, it can be made better, the world can be fixed up, and the faith that we have of being these corporeal beings, at least to some extent, is not some kind of hell on earth. Notice, the Gnostics, the Gnostic Gospels that the Rockefeller Foundation and Elaine Pagels and other people have been trying to dig up and popularize, and Time magazine has gone far, and Newsweek. The news magazines generally have some kind of Gnosticism every year around this time. We'll see what they have this year. What they try to tell you is that God coming into the world was a terrible mistake. That's the attempt to rehabilitate Judas, because if you see Judas as somebody positive, then this is a way of saying, well, it was a terrible mistake for God to come into the world in human form, and therefore Judas was somebody who helped him to correct this terrible mistake and right the wrong and get out of the world again. If the goal of God is to get out of the world at all costs, which seems to be what Buddhism suggests, then that doesn't reflect too well on the rest of us who have to be in here. So the result of all this, I think, is a position which says economic development is possible. The physical universe is subject to improvement. It's not radically evil. We can fix it up. We can make it better. Maybe we can't make it perfect, certainly not. We can't get rid of evil completely. Evil is the lack of development, but we can always push the borders of development out there. So this indicates that the task of economic development essentially is the great platform for humanity at this point. And I'd refer people also to the works of St. Augustine, right? This brown or black guy from North Africa, right, from Hippo in Algeria, who indeed is the founder of Western civilization. He's telling us, I think, that it doesn't make sense to sit around contemplating the end of the world. Right? A lot of people said with the sack of Rome in 410 A.D., the world has come to an end, or the end time is at hand. And the answer of St. Augustine to that is it's ridiculous to sit around and try to think about that. So don't worry about what's going to happen in 3 years in December 2012. As St. Augustine says, this is ridiculum. Don't waste your time on it. Rather, think about doing good, and that means, well, the idea of good works. People can disagree about faith. Certainly, the details of faith are an object of controversy. But the good works of charity are available for all to see, and anybody can understand those. And therefore, bona opera, good works, this is the great need of the time. And what does bona opera mean? What does good works mean? Well, the big ones, the great projects of world economic infrastructure, right? The Nile Congo, the Cape to Cairo, the Dakar to Djibouti, the Mekong project, the Ganges Brahmaputra project, the Indus project, the Tennessee Valley Authority for the Helmand River, and on, right? The new Panama Canal or canals, the Kra Canal, and so forth. The great unfinished business of humanity and the area of obvious cooperation of all concerned is these efforts. Now, the degradation of the U.S. that we have pointed out is so great that the current U.S. ruling class feels threatened by these ideas. For example, we just had the opening of the Turkmenistan-China gas pipeline this past week. It's 7,000 kilometers. It's going to rev up. It's going to be going at full capacity in a couple of years. We just had a ceremony with the Turkmen president. This is Berdi Mohammed, along with Hu Jintao of China, Karimov of Uzbekistan, Nazarbayev of Kazakhstan, to get this pipeline going. Everybody benefits. They get a common interest from it. Let's go from Iraq to Iran, through Pakistan, into China, and into India, and solve the problem of the subcontinent through a Marshall Plan of shared economic development. So that's my Christmas message, and Merry Christmas to all.